Today we'll be building Inaros to absolutely destroy Steel Path without using a single Forma. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or a curious newcomer, I've got a build for you. So grab your coffee, sit back, and relax, because this is everything you need to know about your new Sand King, Inaros. Now, if you want to know how you can achieve what you just saw, then be sure to stick around till the end, because in this video, we'll be covering everything from his upgraded abilities to modding tips and even fashion suggestions. Now, without further ado, let's jump right into his new abilities. You might recall Inaros' previous passive ability. He would transform into a coffin upon reaching 0 health. While in that state, Inaros could siphon health from enemies. If he slayed approximately 2 foes, he would revive without any cost. However, this siphoning mechanic lacked scalability, so if you were in the coffin state, you may as well be dead. Quite the ironic twist. That being said, his passive has since been greatly improved. Instead of the coffin, he now becomes a sand ghost upon death. This sand ghost can punch enemies to revive, and unlike before, revival depends on the number of punches you deal instead of damage, which means this scales way better. But the more often you die, the number of punches needed to revive will increase. The Sand Ghost can also hit multiple enemies per hit, so aiming for large groups makes reviving a walk in the park. Furthermore, hits from his sand cats also count towards his revival. Inaros' first ability remains largely unchanged except for a couple of bug fixes done to make finishers overall smoother. The ability is pretty straightforward. When activated, Inaros throws sand in front of him in a cone shape. Enemies hit suffer a minor damage over time debuff, which heals Inaros. Additionally, enemies facing Inaros when struck by the sand will get blinded and vulnerable to melee finisher attacks. The main use of this ability is the instant crowd control from its blind. It might seem a little underwhelming throwing sand at people.
Pocket sand!
But with some ability range, we're able to lock down entire rooms in an instant. Inaros' second ability is now a revamped Sandstorm, featuring significant upgrades. When activated, Inaros becomes invulnerable and summons a swirling sandstorm around him. Though unlike before, enemies are no longer scattered randomly. Instead, they're now pulled into the vortex, enhancing his crowd control. Additionally, he now leeches health from trapped enemies and moves faster. After the sandstorm dissipates, downed enemies are vulnerable to ground finishers, which also replenish Inaros' health. This is my absolute favorite aspect of his rework. It essentially turns him into a moving black hole, drawing in and crowd controlling enemies right before your eyes.
Black hole.
His third ability is now Scarab Armor. As the name suggests, it's similar to the defensive portion of his old ability, Scarab Swarm. Holding down the ability enables you to convert health into armor. Furthermore, it can now be cast while moving and protects you from status effects, and it also protects you from knockdowns. As you get hit by status effects, their effect is prevented, but some of the Scarab Armor is consumed. Scarab Swarm unleashes a relentless onslaught of scarabs, inflicting guaranteed corrosion upon enemies and stripping away their armor. The damage of this attack is directly tied to Inaros' health rather than his ability strength. Additionally, fallen enemies engulfed by the swarm summon sand cats to aid Inaros in battle, while spreading the swarm's reach to nearby foes. Not only does this ability excel in crowd control, attacks from the sand cats also contribute towards triggering Inaros' passive ability to revive. Moreover, by directly targeting acolytes with Scarab Swarm, it has the added capability to immobilize them, rendering them vulnerable and easy prey for subsequent attacks. All the builds in this video are using 0 Forma, even the melee weapon, which I am using to kill the enemies. We'll go through the builds and then how to play him. Now let's start with the beginner's setup. As we want to utilize his crowd control abilities, we want to mod for range and duration. Hunter Adrenaline is a nice way to get energy. If you do not have Overextended or Hunter Adrenaline, feel free to swap them for any health or armor mod, such as Steel Fiber or Carapace mods. Moving on to the Steel Path setup. This build is slightly more expensive as we're running the primed versions of mods, alongside adaptation. We're also using Arcane Guardian to give us extra armor. I also like to run Arcane Strike for the added melee speed. Now this is quite important because there are 2 melee mods that allow us to regenerate tons of health. Healing Return for combo builds and Life Strike for heavy attacks. In this video, I'm going to be utilizing Life Strike, and my weapon of choice would be the Pennant. Firstly because it looks hella cool, but also because its heavy attack has a guaranteed slash proc. The damage from the slash proc ignores enemy armor, and we are therefore able to one-shot Steel Path mobs with this budget setup. Now you can utilize any weapon of your choice, especially if you already have maxed out builds with other weapons. The Pennant is just a suggestion for those looking for a zero Forma build. If you're willing to spend the Forma, you can add in more attack speed or range in the final slot. As a majority of our damage is coming from the slash procs, the Smite mod is a requirement. This is because faction mods apply twice for status effects, which means that the Smite mod increases our damage by a lot, and removing it will result in a huge loss of damage. At the start of the mission, cast his third ability to gain extra armor alongside status and knockdown immunity. You can recast this whenever the armor starts to drop. When entering a new room, cast your first ability to blind enemies. I then like to use Sandstorm to group enemies up as I travel through the room. And if your fourth ability is not active, cast it at the group of enemies. This provides us with an added layer of crowd control that will help us passively in the background. Then, spam your heavy attacks to kill and regenerate your health. Upon entering a new room, just rinse and repeat. Cast your first ability to blind them, then use Sandstorm to group them up, and lastly melee to kill. And if you're up against an Acolyte, simply cast your fourth ability to disable them and slowly beat them to death. Anyways, if you've made it this far, then be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on these exciting Zero Forma builds. Now the colors I used are mainly from the classic Saturated and Eminence palettes. However, feel free to substitute these colors with any that you have available. You can even change the peach colors into gold if you want to go for a more primed look. As for the attachments and armor, I'm using a mixture. However, a full Riv Elite armor set looks just as great, as it has lots of metallic prime-looking parts. And if that's your kind of style, then I highly recommend getting it. This armor set works well on almost any Warframe. You can even use it on normal frames to make them look like their prime variants. Anyways, I haven't had the chance to test out Archon shards just yet, but if you've discovered other enjoyable ways to build him, then do share them in the comments down below. Let's make the most of our Warframe arsenals without the Forma grind. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. ご視聴いただきありがとうございました。さようなら。